This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Campbell.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Also, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. I am back in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Greg is enjoying the sun down in West Palm Beach, Florida, because, of course, the NFL owners are only going to pick the best places to go during March. So Greg's enjoying the weather out there, but let's start with what Mike Vrabel had to say, Greg, today. He had a lot to say, the state of the union, so to speak, for the Patriots organization and this roster. We begin at left tackle because it's the biggest hole that remains. And your thoughts on what Vrabel had to say about Will Campbell. Obviously, Vrabel sounds like he's totally sold that Campbell is a left tackle.
Yeah, that was certainly newsworthy. I mean, I think, I keep going back and forth, Nick. I don't know, how you read it. I mean, because, in one instance, he's, praising Will Campbell sort of, all over the place and about how he's a left tackle and, he's done it in the SEC and he's played so much there. And but he also kept mentioning sort of like, well, there are other guys too. And so I don't know, of course, this time of year for the next month, it's going to be liar season, guys trying to throw people off the scent, maybe the Patriots feel like somebody loves Will Campbell and might come up to get him and they could trade down. But yeah, I mean, he obviously likes Will Campbell a lot. And we figured that would be the case. Will Campbell is really good off the field. He's really good in interviews. You hear from some scouts that it's like the best interview they've ever done. He just kept putting that in there about how there are other guys, they could go to the draft. He said the draft's going to be a good option. Pretty much the biggest takeaway that I took from the left tackle discussion was the Patriots are taking a left tackle and high. And so is that at 4? Is that in a trade back? Is that a, top of the second? Is that trade back into the first? But I think, rest assured the Patriots will be spending a premium pick on a left tackle type.
It's lying season. We all know it's lying season. These GMs, these head coaches, anybody who speaks about a month before the draft, beware of what they say, because they could be just misleading you. They could be trying to pump the tires, as Greg said, of one of these players like Will Campbell, because maybe they believe they can move down and get somebody who they truly want. I know Mark Daniels at Mass Live has some reporting today that he says, several sources in the organization, they love Campbell, and that's from the front office down to the coaching staff and scouts. And so he has a lot of fans in the Patriots organization. Again, we'll see if it happens. I agree with you. It did sound like no matter what, they're going to come out of this draft with a left tackle or a guy they believe can be left tackle. And we'll see if that's the case. Now, of course, last year's draft, they came out with a right tackle, but try to tell us that Caedan Wallace could play left tackle. They were going to try Wallace at left tackle. And today, Vrabel said the same thing. He said that, they're going to try Caedan Wallace at left tackle. They can give him an opportunity there. Are you buying into the idea of Caedan Wallace left tackle experiment 2.0?
Yeah, buying into it as far as I think they're going to try it, because I think at this point, first of all, they need to see what they have, and they will have. I'm not sure how many sort of on-field practices they will have before the draft. It's at least going to be, a couple, I think. Their phase 1, which is not involving the coaches, starts April 7th. And I think that's for a week or two. And then after that, the coaches can be involved on the field. And so at this point, they know they have Morgan Moses, and he's going to be the starting right tackle as of today. That's what they signed him for. So why not give Wallace a chance along with Vidarian Lowe to sort of show what they can do, and then, move them from there. But I think that's more about they solidified right tackle. So why not look at Caedan Wallace on the left side? And also Mike also at one point mentioned about you're going to have a swing tackle, and, could that be a Caedan Wallace type if they do draft, say, like a Will Campbell at 4 or, in the top 10?
Let's revisit it for a second here. From what you saw last year at camp with Caedan Wallace before the injury and before his season really just went off the rails, did you see any glimpses, any flashes that would tell you he has a shot of being a left tackle, Greg?
From what I recall, Nick, I thought his exposure to left tackle was very limited. If you remember my interaction with Elliott Wolf during training camp, and basically, he came back at me when I was like, sort of like your plans that you laid out where like Michael Wynn is the best tackle on the market and, X, Y, and Z, none of that stuff had happened, including, Caedan Wallace on the left side. And he's like, well, what if that stuff didn't happen? And I was like, well, basically everything. I mean, Wallace got some limited snaps at left tackle, but they really were looking at him on the right side. And I'm not going to totally eliminate it. I would say he's probably more in the boat of this season. He would probably be more of a swing tackle and continue to develop him on the left side. I think he would probably be far from being a starting left tackle type this season based on what we saw in a limited amount, whether it was training camp or when he got over the injury during the regular season.
All right, sticking with the draft, Vrabel sounded open to playing Travis Hunter if he's the guy at 4 on both sides of the ball. But there was a caveat, Greg, talking about, he would like him to focus on one position first, correct?
Yeah, he basically said, like, to really get the most improvement, he's going to have a focus on a primary position. So it sounds like he's more of the mind, especially like as a rookie or at least to start, like, let's just make sure he knows what he's doing at one position.
All right, so based on what Vrabel said about Campbell and based on Abdul Carter, I think as far as physically really fits what Vrabel likes to do at edge. And then you've got Travis Hunter. If Greg Bedard had to guess, and that's what it is right now, if Bedard had to guess how those guys are ranked right now by the Patriots front office, Mike Vrabel, what do you feel? Is it Hunter, Carter, Campbell? Is it Carter, Hunter, Campbell? How would you line those guys up right now on the board?
I would probably say it would be Carter, Hunter, then Campbell. And, just to further this and, going through some of the stuff, because, different people are talking at different times down here. It sounds like Abdul Carter's the guy for the Browns at 2. At 3, from the Giants beat writers, and it wasn't so much what GM Joe Shane said today. It's more about how he talks about things. And, of course, these guys, like, when we deal with Patriots people, we know sort of their history and how they discuss things. Their impression universally seemed to be that Hunter is going to be the guy, that they are not going to take Shedeur Sanders at 3, which would be a humongous bummer. Then again, it's lying season, but those beat writers, their feeling was it's going to be Travis Hunter at 3 for the Giants. And, if you're the Patriots, does somebody come up for Shedeur Sanders? That's what you're probably hoping for. That's probably the number one thing. But if that doesn't happen, I think my gut instinct right now, just where things are, I think it would probably be Will Campbell at 4.
I agree with you. Just the thought process of Vrabel building a football team from the inside out. If you look at Campbell and without just I'm really tired of talking about arm length, so I'm not going to talk about arm length today. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his character, if you look at his approach, if you just look at how he plays the game, he certainly feels like a Mike Vrabel player, Greg. And I think at a certain point, Mike's going to look at this and say, yeah, you know what? Even if he ends up being a guard down the road, he could be an all-pro guard, and he's the kind of guy I want on this football team. So enough is enough. We're taking him. Correct?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, that's my read that, he's just exactly the type of player that they want. And they don't really, actually not really. They don't have one single person on that offensive line in that room that I would say is 100% solid Mike Vrabel type of guy, a foundational guy on the offensive line. And so drafting Will Campbell, whether he makes it a tackle or not, and kicks inside the left guard, and he's the next like Logan Mankins for the Patriots, which I don't think he'll be, but he might come close to that, which is fine. I think that the way they've sort of constructed this offseason as far as, bringing in targeted guys, especially on the defense at different places, like getting that foundational piece on the offensive line that's sort of going to be the straw that stirs the drink in that room for years to come, I think would be a priority for Mike Vrabel.
Have you watched more of Campbell since I last talked to you? If so, do you see him as a tackle right now? How likely do you think he can play tackle at the NFL level?
I have not watched any additional film yet, but my feeling still is I think he's going to have trouble with speed rushers on the edge. That's where he ran into issues in college. And to me, he is a guard, possible all-pro. Like I've said before, I see him a lot like Joe Thuney, but probably with more of a nastier physical edge than Joe Thuney, who is more of a technician, and which I think Will Campbell is as well. But I think that Will's got a little bit more, stuff to him, where a little bit more of an edge. And so, I see Campbell as a guard, but I think he's the type of guy that, like Thuney, like we saw this year, until his arms, which are shorter than Will Campbell's. Finally he met a mismatch in the Super Bowl. But I think Campbell is going to be one of those guys like a Thuney that can get you by at left tackle until you maybe have an opportunity to address it a little bit more.
All right, Vrabel had a lot more to say, as we mentioned at the top here. But before we get to more of Vrabel, let's get to Greg telling us about Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I've been doing it. Celtics, they're tonight. I'll be in front of the TV watching that on my computer down here in Florida, and I'll be using Prize Picks to cash in. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The app is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. They also have basketball. You could get on the hometown team. Of course, I would go less on Devers until he actually, hits a ball, gets a hit. But that's up to you guys. And also, the second half of the basketball season is here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, the next guy I wanted to talk about was Christian Barmore. This was another big takeaway for me from what Vrabel talked about today. He mentioned that he expects Barmore to be here at Gillette for the voluntary proceedings. Sounded somewhat promising, Greg.
Yeah, no question. That was another big takeaway for me. I mean, there was some question I think that some people had, or maybe some fan, I don't know who it was, but at some point in time, people were wondering, with the Milton Williams edition and, X, Y, and Z, is he really in the plan for the Patriots, or, how's his health going to be? And, Mike said he saw him recently. He came in to check in with the doctors and, the trainers and all that stuff. And it sounded really positive that he's going to be, the plan is for him to be at voluntary workouts starting April 7th. And it sure sounded, the way Vrabel talked about it, that he is in their plans, that they're optimistic. He seemed excited about him. So, I mean, I think that's a tremendous development for the Patriots, and can make them that much more dangerous on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of Barmore and Williams together on the interior, and being able to have some guys on the edge that might be able to get to the quarterback more often, even if they're cleanup sacks. Harold Landry has had a number of those in his Tennessee days. And then you just kind of envision Gonzalez and Davis outside at cornerback. I mean, the pieces are certainly there, especially if Barmore returns. Even if Barmore is 80 to 85%, But of course, we don't know what's going to happen, and nothing is a guarantee, especially given the health situation that he's been going through. So we all just hope he's better as a young man, health and physically wise. But if he gets back on the field and he looks even 80-85% of what he was back in 2023, then I do think this defense could be damn good. Let's stay on the lines of scrimmage though, Greg, because we talked about left tackle. We talked about that situation with Campbell. The other guy that was mentioned today was Cole Strange, and Vrabel sidestepped again the David Andrews questions, but he did talk about Strange, and he said that Strange is going to get a shot at center. Now, here's what I'm wondering. I think we know how you feel about Strange at center. You've said before that you think that he has at least some of the traits that would make him a good center, if not a really good center in the NFL. Didn't look necessarily great last year when he was given that shot. But I wonder, does this tell us that Strange is going to be the odd man out here? Because if they're going to give him a shot at center, does that mean that they're ruling him out at left guard? Because if they rule him out at left guard, they just signed Bradbury. Feels like Strange might be picking up some bench time this year. Or
it's definitely strange the way he, no pun intended, the way he discussed Cole Strange today. I mean, like, look, he talked him up at center, and he talked him up how good he looked at the end of the year. I don't know if he's trying to get some sort of trade value for him or what, but I mean, I think anybody who knows anything about how they're constructing their roster and that they brought in Garrett Bradbury and they paid him like real money. Garrett Bradbury is the center. So why? He's not competing at center. Mike said that he could compete at center. He's not competing at center. Bradbury's the center. Is he going to be sort of the swing guy, backup at center guard? I mean, that's possible. They could also be trying to, like I said, boost up his trade value so he has something. But, we'll have to see how that goes.
All right. Speaking of, the younger players and trying to figure out what roles they're going to have. We talked about it earlier with Caedan Wallace, maybe getting a shot at left tackle. Sounds like he's going to get an opportunity. Part of the message from Vrabel today was that the guys from last year, they don't necessarily care much about what happened last year. It's in the rear view, looking forward, really a clean slate, not only for Wallace, but also for obviously two guys in Jalen Polk and Jahlani Baker. How much, Greg, do you think right now that they're going to get an opportunity to actually show that they should stay on this team? Are we talking about, hey, we're going to give them some real reps here, or they're starting from the very bottom and they got to build themselves up all over again?
Good question. I mean, I think that they are going to be, from what I understand about, and this goes for a lot of places, especially on the offense, it's sort of like clean slate and everyone's going to get a chance. And I think that Polk and Baker are definitely going to get their opportunities, and it's up to them what they do with it. And if they don't do anything with it, they won't be here very long. That even goes for a second round pick like Jalen Polk. I don't think that the Vrabel and the Patriots, have a whole lot of patience as far as getting this thing up to speed. But, the way he talked really well about Jalen and Javon today and sounded like, he wants to see what they can do. And like last year, and they're turning a new page, and they will get their opportunities. And I think it'll be real.
We'll talk about Diggs a little bit, but it does get interesting as far as the numbers games go. If you look at it and you say, well, they're going to draft a receiver. If they draft a receiver, obviously begin at number 4 at Travis Hunter. Hopefully he falls to you. But if he doesn't, you draft a receiver. I mean, now you got Diggs, you've got Pop, you've got Hollins, you've got Bourne, you've got Polk, you've got Baker, and then you've got another draft pick, maybe 2 draft. That's 7 or 8 guys. You're not going to take 7 or 8 guys into the season. Now, of course, Diggs might miss the first few weeks due to the injury. But, I mean, you're starting to look at this, Greg, and it's tough to imagine that all of the young guys make this roster out of camp unless you have injury issues.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even a guy like Bourne, even though he's been in this offense and he was decently productive with Josh McDaniels, as we've talked about a lot, it took a lot to get him to that point. I think there's too much to do. I mean, I think Kendrick Bourne is in competition with like Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Kayshon Boutte, like, when it comes down to it, once we get through the draft and we know like the numbers, like we'll be able to see like, how many are they going to keep? 5, 6? They're not really going to keep 7, are they? Especially with, if Stephon Diggs isn't quite ready for the start of the season. So there's going to be a real numbers game at, wide receiver, because I don't think that they're done there. But now I will say, in addition to that, one of the things that came out today is it sounds like the 49ers, which they owe Brandon Ayuk like a $20 million option bonus, 20 plus million. Sure sounds like John Lynch said today that they're going to keep Brandon Ayuk, but he didn't completely close it down. So that's out, a trade. It's dwindling. Could it be AJ Brown at some point? But of course, you also have the draft. I think they will be adding to that room at some point.
Yeah, I didn't even bring up Boutte. I mean, that's another name. So yeah. You walk out of the draft, you could have 7 or 8 receivers on this roster. A few dudes got to go. All right, let's talk about Christian Elliss. Obviously, the Patriots matched the offer from Vegas. Vrabel had some very nice things to say about Elliss today.
Yeah, they're very high on him. That was one of the things when they decided to match the offer sheet, talking to people in the organization. Like, they really like him. They like his skill set. They like his speed, his coverage ability. They think like, he's got a high ceiling, like where he is and what he showed. Like, and looking back on my grades from last year, like he didn't grade out great for me. Most of it was in the run game. He had some problems with run fits. Of course, that was a problem with the whole defense. So I don't know how much of it was him, but certainly they love his special teams ability and think he has more upside there. And plus, they had the money to spend in terms of matching the offer sheet.
All right, we got more with Vrabel, but first, Greg's got more to tell you about our friends at Gametime.
Yeah, you got to get out to a game, get the atmosphere, whether it's NCAA, NFL, MLB, what have you. Gametime can get you there. It's the easiest place. I love that app. They have Gametime picks, curates to make it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. That's a must for me. They have a lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right. Also, don't forget about Giardi and Bedard at BSJ, $50 for the year, tag teaming the Patriots coverage. And we told you earlier about Prize Picks. Download that app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right. Greg, let's stick with linebacker, because it certainly sounds like Robert Spillane is going to be your starting middle linebacker this year.
Yeah, I think we sort of saw that coming. I asked Vrabel about it today to get a little bit more, and he wasn't exactly forthcoming. But everybody that I talked to around the team says that he's more of a Mike linebacker than a Will linebacker, and if that's the case, Vrabel did say, he's able to play 3 downs. He's proven that he can play 3 downs in the league, so that means he is going to probably wear the green dot and sort of directing players, all over the place. It will be like a new scheme for him, coming from the Raiders. He was not with Vrabel most recently. But I think you're looking at he's going to be the guy in the middle of the defense.
Of course, Juwan Bentley is now gone. As we know, he was released last week. Jahlani Tavai, is he still dead man walking in that locker room? Do you think he's still gone before we get to camp, or does he have a shot?
I mean, I just don't see how he fits this defense. And, I assume they're going to add somebody on the edge in the draft at some point. It's pretty deep at that position.
Yeah.
You also have Anthony Jennings. Could it be Tavai or Jennings? I mean, I like Jennings a lot more, especially for the scheme. And I think he's a guy, to me, who's improved every single year. And I think he would be good in the scheme. To me, it's a matter of time. Maybe it had something to do with maybe he didn't have a off-season surgery or rehab like Andrews and Bentley, but it's still strange to me that Tavai's still on the roster.
Yeah, it's still strange to me that they released not only David Andrews but Bentley on the same day that they have these introductory press conferences showing off their new shiny toys. I'm still not a big fan of that approach, especially with Andrews, but they did the same thing with Bentley. And I think that's a nice little way that you can just move on from a guy who's, somewhat popular, if not very popular with the fans, and just move on to the next thing. And we're not focused on the past and all that stuff. It's not the way I would do it, but hey, what are you going to do? All right, let's get to Stefon Diggs. Vrabel did talk about Diggs today down there with the media in West Palm Beach. Mark Daniels did some great work over the weekend. Greg, not sure if you checked it out at Mass Live, but he caught up with the trainer of Diggs, and they kind of really went into his rehab process. And, is he ahead? Is he not ahead? How far ahead is he if he is? What do you think about Diggs in this timeline? And if you want to give me the percentage of chance that he's actually ready for week one and he could be out there playing snaps.
I mean, every single player is different. So it's impossible to say, but I would find it hard to believe that he would be out there week one. I mean, I guess the percentages, I'd probably put it a little less than 50-50, probably 40%. I mean, it's, I did see the story. I always, and this isn't about, that report or like other reports, but like, you get a lot of reports in the off season, including, we'll hear it about it with draft picks or, this guy coming back from this and they're in the best shape of their lives and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This guy's getting paid to rehab Steph Diggs. And I'm sure he's very good at his job. And, that he said, like, he's been in this 14 years and he's never seen a guy at this point already and how amazing it is. I mean, I'm not saying like he's lying or anything like that. It's just, everybody knows me. Anybody that's listening to this podcast knows I'm a natural born cynic. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm from the show me state. I want to see it before I believe it. And, Diggs also did say, when he talked to the media on Friday, he did mention something about he was sort of pushing it and sort of, had to check himself a little bit. Those things are going to happen in the rehab process. And like, you could be flying for a while and all of a sudden you have a setback for a week or two. And now you have to go back a step. And so, we'll see. It sounds like the good thing for the Patriots, it sounds like Steph Diggs is one of these unicorns. We'll see whether he gets through the whole process, unscathed or not. But, look, if I was a Patriots fan, I would be optimistic about it. I wouldn't care about week one. The main thing is like, get it right and make sure he's effective and that there's not going to be any setbacks during the season, because that would be the worst thing.
Yeah, and we can't be naive. We've got to acknowledge, this guy does the interview with Mark, and of course, it's also a marketing opportunity for his business and for him to promote himself. And so if he has the opportunity to say, oh, yeah, we got Diggs well ahead of schedule, he's doing great, and he's helping his own business as well. So we can't be naive and overlook that fact. What I've said from the beginning, Greg, here, and I'm totally pro Diggs signing because he's the best guy now in the room. If you get him out there before October, it's a win, right? But you really should be focusing somewhere in October. And that should be the estimate of when he'll be back. If he's back earlier than that, fantastic. If he's back, in November, now you got to wonder how he's rehabbing from this. But I think the reasonable target would be sometime in October. And if he hits that mark, you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of feeling good, you've talked about the offensive line coaches on this podcast with me. We've talked about the fact the Patriots have not one, not two, but three of them. And Vrabel kind of outlined the plan with all three of these offensive line coaches. What'd you make of that plan, Greg?
Well, everybody knows me. So, I asked Vrabel that question. And, really it's about, and he mentioned this, that, whether it's Marrone, Huff-Talling, and then also you have Robert Kugler, like you have three experienced offensive line coaches in that room. I mean, there was one year, remember, it was Matt Patricia, who was also the offensive coordinator, and the other guy, I can picture him, but whatever. They didn't even really have like one real offensive line coach one year. So the Patriots have 3, and Vrabel mentioned like most of the time you might have a head offensive line coach, an assistant offensive line coach, and then a third guy might be, a glorified intern. But for the Patriots to have 3 experienced coaches, I've never really seen that done before. So that's why I asked the question about how are they going to do this? And, talking to, some other teams and how they do certain things. Like, for instance, the Eagles have a guy, I don't know if you remember the name, Nick, you probably do, Connor Barwin, who was an outside linebacker for the Texans for a long time, played with the Eagles. Like, Connor Barwin they brought him in player development, and all he did was work with like the practice team guys and develop them and to help develop depth. And to me, and Vrabel sort of outlined this, like, they're going to be able to divvy things up between the 3 of them and like, really get some, really good improvement, really good teaching. Hopefully they'll develop these guys faster, whether it's Layden Robinson or, Cole Strange, Jake Andrews, any of these younger guys that have really been in a really crappy room for multiple years. This is a huge step up. And to me, because of my affinity for the offensive line, I love that answer. It was my favorite part. And it's sort of, it warms my heart that the Patriots offensive linemen will finally be taken care of.
All right, we got 2 more questions here. First, joint practices. It sounds like Patriots are working towards having a joint practice with the Commanders here at Gillette, and then go to Minnesota to have a joint practice against the Vikings. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only one joint practice last year, which was against Philly. It went horribly wrong. We all witnessed the murder that happened as the Patriots got outlined in chalk that day. But do you like the 2 joint practice idea with 2 different teams versus just having one here at Gillette?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the joint practices are good. I like how they're going up against, 2 really distinctly different operations, 2 really good teams, in Washington and Minnesota. They'll be going up against Brian Flores' defense in Minnesota, which is really good. Of course, you have Jade Daniels with the Commanders. I hope the Twins are in town when they're, out in Minnesota, because I'd like to get back to that park. That place is tremendous. But, yeah, I like it. I think it's really good for the Patriots, and it, will sort of break things up for the guys.
Last one for you, Greg, before you get some pool time down there in West Palm Beach, because, of course, you need that pool time. Mm-hmm. What was your read of Vrabel's like overall vibe today?
I thought it was awesome. I mean, he was completely relaxed. He was being himself. He was confident. It just, Nick, to me, it was an air of a guy who thought his team accomplished a lot in this offseason. And, from what I hear behind the scenes, the coaches are working like really well together. Vrabel talked about, sort of the vibe in the building, the energy in the building. And I can confirm multiple people have told me that. And for me, I saw a Mike Vrabel who got through his first offseason, just about, or, first phase of the offseason, and feels like they accomplished a lot and got the type of people that they want. And I think when he now looks at the depth chart and looks at the roster, he sees a team that he can compete with. One question I didn't get to ask him today that I wanted to ask him, I don't know if he would have answered it or not, but, remember at his opening press conference, he said something along the lines of, we just want to start with being a team that, doesn't lose games, or something along those lines. And I think he's to that point where he feels like he has that type of team. You probably remember the quote a little bit more accurately, but if I was a Patriots fan watching this, I'd be like, we got a guy in charge who knows what he's doing, and he's feeling good about where things are.
There was one answer that he had this morning that I loved, and it was just all about accountability, saying, look, if we get something wrong, you can blame it on me. I'm a big boy. I'm the guy that, at the end of the day, really, if I can take that, we're going to have many things go well for us, but not everything. And if we screw something up, that's on me. Just that level of accountability. And, I don't want to dump on Gerard and, what's in the past is in the past, but there were several quotes last year where Gerard didn't necessarily do a great job of taking accountability as the head coach. And I think Vrabel has kind of set that standard really quickly, that he's going to be willing to do that. Now, if he doesn't, we should be all over him. But at least he's telling us he's going to do that. All right, he's Greg. I'm Nick. Greg's going to the pool. I'm going to the living room, which is much less sexy of an option, but it is what it is. That's why he's the boss and I'm not. We'll be back later in the week with, I'm sure, a lot more from the owners' meetings. Until then, be well.
After losing out on Chris Godwin and bowing out of the sweepstakes for both DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp, the Patriots have finally landed their proven veteran wide receiver, signing former division rival Stephon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million deal with $26 million guaranteed. On passes of at least 10 air yards or downfield targets, Diggs still excels at making defenders uncomfortable against off-man coverage and exploiting weak spots against zone coverage. Most of his success came on deep curls between the hashes and in-breakers behind the second level, which was on full display during his 6-catch, 82-yard road game up in New England. Here, Houston comes out in a 2-back pistol look with Diggs and Tank Dell in reduced splits to either side of the formation. Christian Gonzalez starts out in press, but bails before pointing his hips to the sidelines. Despite being at a leverage disadvantage for his in-breaking route, Diggs makes space by firing off the ball to create a sense of urgency, then faking outside once he's on the corner's toes. Then, when Gonzalez bites and tries grabbing to recover, Diggs swipes the arm away and breaks inside before catching a heater for 6 points. Diggs doesn't get the same consistent separation against press man, but his strong hands and concentration allow him to make difficult grabs despite being completely blanketed in coverage. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to become members of Patriots Press Pass here on YouTube for more breakdowns just like this, as well as a ton of other great bonus content.